Hey guys, this is Tyler here from Estonia. I want to talk here about the economic decline that has been going on the past year, 2 years worldwide due to this whole pandemic and the impact this is going to continue making, I predict, in the next 5 to 10 years on the dating relationship scene worldwide, especially in certain countries. This could be anywhere, but certain countries will most likely be more impacted than others. The job situation in many places in the world has really been super negative. It's had a massive impact on many countries, and it's just been very detrimental on the well-being of a lot of people. It's impacted so many different facets of society, and people of all ages, all demographics have been unemployed. Some sectors have been much more affected than others. Some noteworthy sectors that have really been impacted are areas like tourism, hospitality, restaurant industry. Especially people-facing industries have taken a massive toll. It's very unfortunate. And U.S., Canada are two examples here, two massive countries that where it's impacted these places tremendously. And I would like to say that this will reverse and improve a lot in the next few years, but I'm not so sure that will happen. This obviously has been an opportunity for the global elite to install this great reset, as they often call it, and try to basically reconfigure society. It's also been a way as a sort of cash grab for the elites to try take more than they already have taken, and basically just continue whittling away the middle class of America, of many Western countries. And it's really depressing to see, honestly, but it's not the end of the world, and you can still enjoy life. You can still have a good life, be positive. One of the biggest areas I think that it's made many people realize is that maybe they should go to a cheaper country to live, because what a lot of people have had to do is either do some kind of remote work, they've had to totally go into a different sector, maybe just live off of savings, investments. I've worked with clients that have crypto investments. They have at least 6 figures. And in some countries, like in the Balkans and Southeast Asia, even if you have like 300K in crypto investments, if you maneuver properly, this can last for a guy even at a young age the rest of their life. And obviously they could always continue growing in a portion of those investments and become wealthier. It just means obviously too they'll have to be very focused then on the financial investment sector. This essentially will become their new career. And it's fortunate that there have been guys where they had this as a backup. There's been other people that have had other kinds of investments. I've worked with a guy, he's had this, and this has been kind of his saving grace. And so people have had maybe these kind of investments that have kept them afloat. And perhaps this can continue growing for these people, or they can relocate, maybe continue living off of this with a lower cost country, or repivoting and going into a different job in that respective country, maybe not getting paid as much, getting paid enough to live off of, and then having their investments and whatever it may be as backup. This is, I think, will become more common. Obviously, like Andrew Henderson, very well-known guy in this community, he obviously works mostly with higher net worth people, but there are a lot of guys that fall into, I'd say, the 6-figure net worth range where they have enough assets they can leave. Some could even buy like a passport in a foreign country. I think if a guy had like 800 grand, take like 100 grand of that and buy a passport would be well worth it. And then, of course, there's many people, and they might stay in their home countries and try to make the most of it. Some guys have families. They're very tied to where they come from. Maybe Canada, maybe US, and they don't want to leave. And what I see though in the near future is that the dating market and just overall relationship expectations that women have of men will probably have to start reversing. I don't see from a practical angle how the standards that we've seen the past 10 to 15 years can continue going up, because there's just too many problems in my opinion. There's so many like guys now, they barely have anything to speak of financially. Many don't have jobs or have like part-time jobs that just barely get them by. The progression, how what men have had to provide now for so long has been so inflated, the marketplace. Obviously, there's just been less and less incentive for guys to have a relationship, marriage, even short-term relationship. And especially in the past 6 months, past year, with the pandemic, it's been more of a strain than ever before in guys. And this has been a stimuli for guys to opt not to pursue it. And I think it's put less guys into the dating market, relationship market. And a lot of the guys that are presently in the dating market, trying to find a girlfriend, are not like the high quality guys. A lot of them actually probably are the guys towards the bottom of the barrel. Maybe those guys that fall into that simp category, that fall into the category of kind of undesirables. And a lot of the guys, especially us MGTOW guys, I mean, more of us MGTOW guys fall into the like top 20, top 10% of guys. I know this because I've spoken to many of you guys before, and I know that we actually do quite well for the most part, and realize that it's a rigged game, especially in Western countries. And for guys like who are looking at relocating different country, maybe just different city, have obviously a mindset that why go into a relationship if I'm moving in a year and 2 years? Maybe even 4 years, who knows? Like, it doesn't seem worth it, because if you're leaving, you're going to probably leave the person behind anyhow. And a lot of guys just are like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. It's just not worth it. The women often bring very little to the table. They don't contribute very much when it comes down to it. It's not like the 1950s, 1960s. Furthermore, like guys going through divorces or separations, they have kids, and many guys are lucky if they even get partial custody nowadays of their children. Many guys don't get any custody today, or they get very little. And many guys also have like supervisory time with their kids. It's terrible. And all of these factors, plus the overall nature, the more pessimistic vibe now in many countries, is enough for a lot of the higher quality guys to not to go into the dating marketplace. And the expectations, I have no doubt, I think right now it's kind of stunted. That's something people have to realize. A lot of the relationship environment, I think, is stunted because I've mentioned this before. Women tend to be a little slower with catching on to things. They don't catch on to they're not as ahead, you could say. And also, for things to really be noticeable in society, I think take at least 2 or 3 years. So like the hardcore economic impact of the COVID won't be as noticed for probably another year or 2 years. And just what women can expect of men, what men have to do on dates, or what they have to provide. I think it's probably going to go from more of a filet mignon situation to a hot dog or burger situation. I think with the limited surplus of even decent quality guys in some of these countries that want to date, they're not going to have a lot of like decent options to choose from. It's not going to be like, say, 5 or 10 years ago. It will be really interesting to see, like, in a few years. I think there's going to be a lot of readjustment of what's expected and what's brought to the table, and this is really needed. I had been saying this for the past couple of years. I've been telling some family and friends that the marketplace is so inflated, and readjustment was necessary. I know some people too say that these top percentage of guys will just get more girls, or they may just get more, it may become more whittled down, this percentage of guys that get the top number of gals. Maybe this will happen in some countries. I don't know though here, because one thing to remember, a lot of those quote-unquote top percentile of guys, these guys aren't necessarily seeking out like girlfriends. I think a lot of them actually are also bisexual. That's kind of a different topic for a different time. I don't even think some of them are straight, and this is one factor why I think they don't want long-term relationships. Just, I've known of some of these guys, and I'll just leave it at that. But the problem now also is because there's also a lot more control, more and more control in Western countries put over on society and how people can go about their day-to-day life. It's been more so like in Canada, US, Australia, and this leaves like kind of a psychological impact on both men and women, and especially men. They don't want to get in a situation where they have to go to jail. They get arrested because they're accused of something, and then they lose like their passport for privileges and cannot leave like their respective country. These are the kind of things that now guys have to be aware of if they're going into that environment. That like, so that category of decent quality men is probably going to just become smaller in the coming years. And also remember that like many job sectors have seen a huge reduction in both average salaries and employment, just overall standards lower that employees can expect. In many sectors, I would imagine the overall or the average salaries have probably gone down at least a third. In some sectors, even more than that. People just don't have as much spending power. They don't have as much to throw around, and this makes it more tricky. Guys obviously can't do what they could have done before. They don't have the same like flex. And I think too that the many people are, as I've mentioned in other videos, are very depressed. Younger people, older people, but especially younger people, and they don't like take care of themselves, I don't think, as well either. I mean, I see this here in Estonia. The first time I went to this country was in 2017. Not as much physically speaking, like going to the gym and stuff, just how people look, how they like groom and just put themselves together. It looked a little more polished when I first went here 3 years ago. Or 3.5 years ago compared to now. It looks a little more sloppy, you could say. I think this is probably the case too in other European countries, and definitely like in the US and Canada. When I see videos like in the US and Canada, it's really interesting because I almost forget how sloppy, especially the women compared to like in Europe. It's interesting how sloppy a lot of the women are there. And definitely it makes it much more unappealing to guys to date and to pursue relationships, because you're not seeing something that's very visually appealing. And I know some guys in the MGTOW community have brought this up, that this actually makes it easier for a guy to forego dating and relationships and not have interest. So as like this declines, economics decline of guys, this is probably going to have an interesting impact on the overall relationship market. The standards probably will go down, what men have to bring to the table. Maybe not. Maybe it will go the other way around. It's difficult to say. That's not to say though, I mean, there are still countries you can go to, and I think they will maintain themselves to some degree. Some people here don't agree with me on this this issue, but I believe that some parts of the world, like Philippines or Balkans, Russia to an extent, will stay pretty well in the future. Because also, as the West declines, as the US declines in Canada, Eastern countries will probably continue to grow, emerge, and likewise, entertainment industry, among other sectors, will have a very important impact on these countries. As I've also mentioned, economics is a big area. If you want to look at countries, how much control is imposed upon them, look at their financial banking institutions and who they're tied with. If they're heavily tied with Western countries like the US or Canada or England, you'll see that probably reflect in their society and how governments have to run those countries, especially in times like right now. In the societies that are actually the most free, it's probably going to be reflective in their financial and banking institutions. This is one of the main reasons, like in Serbia, I think they're pretty free at the moment. There's a lot of liberty compared to other places because they don't have a lot of tie to the Western financial banking systems. And I've also mentioned this before, most policies, it really just goes back to the money, the greenback. It's all about that and how governments and countries operate. If the countries will always reflect those patterns, and also with the whole standards and reduction in standards that I foresee, is that we've seen there's been less and less face-to-face interaction that people have now presently. Now, like where I am in Europe, it's not like nearly as bad as other countries. There's other places like in the States or in England, people are truly locked down. There's really not a such thing as a lockdown like here in Estonia presently. And you can go to parks, go to other venues. There's still a lot of people out and about. You would be surprised. Whereas you go to other countries and they're truly locked down. People are so limited how much they can talk to people face to face. And this means obviously too in those venues, girls obviously can't meet guys or very many guys in these public venues like prior, which I see also becoming more of an issue as if these lockdowns maintain themselves. Sometimes can't believe I've seen videos like in Canada and England where these people will have gatherings at a private home, like 10 people, and someone will call the police, and the police actually come to the home and they pull people out of the house. It's crazy. I would never foresee something like that here in Estonia. This kind of situation, this is very telling of where the future of the US and Canada is. But you can always leave if this bothers you and you have bad feelings about this. Really, it just comes down to the guy. In some countries, yeah, and another thing too is like demographics. I've kind of pointed this before that we need like higher quality guys like from the US, Canada, maybe Germany, England. They're leaving their countries. They're going to other places, relocating. And like the US is going to lose a lot of its talent pool, like we saw in South Africa. Probably this trend will likely continue as guys feel more and more disenfranchised. They don't really feel like they belong in these societies. And so as we've seen, like the whole prison demographic, kind of criminal demographic has really just continued growing in the US. A lot of illegal immigrants probably are going to get citizenship within the next few years in the US. This pool of guys will become more and more prevalent in the dating pool in the US or Canada. And this will be the options for many girls. And some will be fine, but many others will really, they won't want this. And this is kind of where I see the future going in Western countries. But at the moment, it's really hard to make 100% predictions on this. This is kind of what I see. So give me your feedback below, and thank you.